Hello and welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation, Back to Work, Business is Not as Usual. Reopening your business or returning employees to the workplace during and after the COVID-19 pandemic won't be as simple as announcing a grand reopening or a return to the workplace date. During this presentation, we will discuss how preparing your business and your employees will be anything but business as usual. I'm Katie Cummins, and I'm an HR consultant with HRBoost. At HRBoost, we believe that every business deserves strategic HR. HRBoost offers services that allow your business to do what it does best. We help companies contain costs, minimize employer risk, and relieve the administrative burden of HR, all while creating results that rival your competition. From shared services to project-based to a la carte options, we provide the resources and support you need to invest in your people. HRBoost has effectively been operating a virtual business and collaborative team throughout our nearly 10 years in business, and we've learned a few things along the way. We have continued to work virtually during the COVID-19 pandemic, advising clients at every step along the way in dealing with the pandemic and the impact to their business and employees. If you're looking for strategies on how to reopen your business and bring your employees back to work, then stay tuned. Reopening your business or returning employees to the workplace is at the top of mind for many organizations, but it also comes with many questions. When and how? Most likely, reopening your business and returning your employees to the physical work site will happen in waves and stages. There are a number of considerations that businesses must take into account, from workplace safety to considering the people side of returning to work and what that looks like, from recalling furloughed or laid off employees to looking at expanded or new benefits and paid leaves of absences, to considering remote work, all while your communication strategy and plan, is it in place and what does that look like? Back to work, but it's not back to normal. And that means changes in a lot of areas. This should be reflected in your policy as well as your plans for your continued business operations and business continuity. Reopening your business and returning your employees to the workplace is not so simple. It won't be announcing a grand reopening or simply selecting a date of the return to the workplace where employees will return to your physical on-site premises. It certainly is anything but business as usual. As states begin lifting shelter-in-place orders, a strategic post-pandemic plan must be developed. It's important to be realistic, assess your needs, and most likely it's not a 100% full steam ahead type of plan. Again, returning to the workplace and reopening your business will most likely occur in stages and phases. Right now, every business is trying to figure out how to transition back. From reopening non-essential businesses to transitioning back to the office, there are many variables to consider, and the details and timing of each organization's plan to return are going to look different. Depending on government and state guidelines and the nature of your business, there are several key issues that you'll need to understand and start preparing for now. As of May 15th, about 40% of America's population, roughly 130 million people, are still under some form of lockdown. However, many states are beginning to lift and restrictions are starting to ease. While there's not a crystal ball, it's important to stay up to date on state and local guidelines in order to determine when these restrictions may lift for you. And as states begin to lift restrictions, there may be little notice. So you need to have your plan in place and ready to act. The first question is when to reopen. Now, businesses, of course, first need to comply with state and government guidelines, but the when depends on whether or not your business is ready and safe to reopen. The next question then quickly turns to how. How do you safely reopen your business, keep employees and customers safe, and continue to operate efficiently? There are still many questions, but one thing is for sure. The workplace you left will not be the same workplace you return to, and the new normal will look much different. One of the first steps in determining whether or not your business is ready to reopen is that you must ensure your workplace is safe. Always put the health and safety of your employees first. Guidance and guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control, which is critical and crucial right now. Employers must ensure that their workplace is as safe as it can be. Employees and customers may have fears of returning to the business, returning to your organization, and so preparing for and communicating how safety is a top priority will help to ease fears and increase your brand loyalty. Consider implementing a safety committee made up of members of your organization who will stay up to date on the latest COVID-19 guidance, any type of safety protocols, and help ensure that your employees and your customers are staying safe while on premises. You'll want to make sure that you have a cleanliness measure and a plan in place. And what was in place prior to COVID-19 may not be sufficient enough for what we're dealing with today. You may need to look at revising your protocols or perhaps implementing for the first time. Establish a routine cleaning practice of frequently touched surfaces. More frequent cleaning and disinfection may be required based on level of use. In common areas and high traffic areas, most likely will need more frequent and more thorough cleaning and disinfecting. You may want to provide disposable gloves, disinfecting wipes, or hand sanitizers to your employees, so they may also be responsible for cleaning their own personal areas or any areas that they come in contact with. Of course, if an employee becomes sick, you must close off the area immediately and make sure that you're implementing more thorough cleaning and disinfecting procedures in areas in which the employee may have come in contact with. You'll want to make sure that you're providing personal protective equipment, PPE, to your employees. This could include masks, gloves, face shields, etc. And also personal hand sanitizers for your employees as well. If you haven't done so already, you'll need to make sure that you order now. Of course, as you're aware, supply chains have been busy making sure that there are enough personal protective equipment and sanitizer available. You'll want to make sure that you have secured those types of equipment for your employees. And maybe consider branding the equipment as well for a personal touch. You'll want to make sure that you have posters, signage, visual reminders of the safety guidelines and precautions that you're implementing in your workforce. For example, markers to place 6 feet of social distancing, reminders to wash your hands, wear your personal protective equipment, things of that nature that are going to serve as visual cues and reminders of employees of the new protocols that you've implemented and how they can stay safe in the workforce. You may choose to implement employee health screenings at your worksite as well. If that's the case, then you need to not only develop your plan and procedure, but also have a communication strategy so that way you can inform employees on what they can expect. For example, you may require that every employee have their temperature taken and that employees would be screened whether or not they are experiencing respiratory symptoms or whether or not they've been in contact with anyone experiencing symptoms related to COVID-19. Whatever your new protocol will be sure to develop your plan and communicate it accordingly with your employees. You'll want to ensure confidentiality as this is protected health information. Taking temperature, asking health-related questions, and so forth. You'll want to follow the same guidelines for protecting any other personal health information. You'll want to make sure that you are developing your exposure response plan as well that would address any isolation, containment, stay-at-home requirements, and any communication that would be given to a potentially affected staff. It's important to define your customer and visitor protocol as well. If at all possible, avoid visitors on site unless it's truly deemed as essential. If visitors must come on site, it's important to establish those protocols of what that looks like. Limiting the number of customers on site at a particular time or in a particular area, perhaps having visiting hours where there are less times when they would be in your office, and having certain restrictions such as no handshakes, being 6 feet apart, and so forth. You may want to consider video or online conferencing tools as well. Again, if your visitors and your customers do not need to come on site, then it would be best and safest to avoid doing so. Social distancing, of course, has become a public health importance lately, but it's never necessarily been a part of the workplace as we know it. So this is one of the areas of new normal that we're seeing now. So we need to establish social distancing measures within the workplace. It starts by moving workstations apart to increase that 6 feet of separation distance. Now, this is particularly a challenge for many organizations that have open office plans. So open offices were thought as innovative and collaborative because it allows ideas to be exchanged and flowed. But of course, it also allows for the exchange of potential germs and potentially infecting your employees. So now it becomes a public health challenge. So you'll want to make sure that you get creative in your desk design and your setup, that you are allowing enough distance to safely separate your employees by being able to work, but being safe at the same time. Consider implementing one-way traffic patterns throughout your workplace, particularly in high traffic areas of hallways, entrances and exits of the building, in stairwells, to limit face-to-face contact. Anything and everything that you can do to distance your employees and eliminate any points of contact will help everyone be safe. In-person meetings is another important area to consider, and when at all possible, avoid in-person meetings. Use conference calls, video calls, emails, chats. Even if you're in the same building, it's important to eliminate those in-person, face-to-face potential areas of contact. If for some reason meetings in person must occur and they're unavoidable, then take the proper precautions. In-person meetings should be brief with as few people as possible, and employees should sit 6 feet apart without shaking hands in a conference room with open doors where you're not touching the same surfaces. Consider closing high traffic common areas such as break rooms or lunch rooms. Encourage your employees not to congregate in areas such as bathrooms, copy rooms, and so forth, and make sure that they're maintaining that 6 feet distance. This is where those visual cues and reminders can come into place, and having markings that visually show how far away people need to be can help them maintain that 6 feet of social distance. Consider bringing your lunch, having your employees eat at their desk to avoid those common areas, and even having staggered shifts of lunch and rest breaks. Again, rotating throughout and looking at ways where you can separate employees as much as possible. You'll want to make sure that you're looking at your travel policies and travel plans as well. Travel should be eliminated or postponed. Any types of gatherings, trainings, or any other in-person events ideally should be canceled, postponed, or perhaps converted to an online format. It's important that we take these measures now to distance ourselves in order to stay safe in the future. Looking at reopening your business, it's important to understand the people side of your business. And if you're in business and you have people, you're in the people business. And safety, of course, is a top concern. But so is looking at the physical and mental health of your employees. And it's something that we need to be mindful of and considerate as well. Think about this from an employee's perspective. For the last 2 months, they've been working at home, instructed to shelter in place, social distance, avoid any type of gatherings. For some employees, they haven't even left the house to go pick up groceries. So it wouldn't be surprising if they're reluctant to suddenly jump back into work outside the home, take public transit, and return to a busy office. To retain talent and build commitment, employers will need to come up with new ways of working. Ideally, every business would provide virtual work opportunities. However, it's not ideal for every business. In order to make the wine, you have to work in the vineyard. So for some businesses that must engage in work on-site, on-premise, they really must communicate what they are doing specifically to keep employees safe. However, some companies have embraced working remotely in the largest work-from-home experiment we have ever seen. For example, Twitter just recently announced that their employees would be allowed to work from home forever, and many companies have no plans to return their employees to the office for quite some time. If they can work remotely and continue to do so, the guidance and advice is that they should. Leaders need to show compassion to the difficulties some employees face when your doors open. Some may have young children without school or camp to supervise them, or others may be medically vulnerable. It's your chance to empathize with your people and make accommodations. While this is certainly not legal advice, consider which accommodations must be made under ADA and which are a best practice or simply the right thing to do. While fear is not an accommodation that you need to make, leaders need to be mindful of the fear employees have about returning to work. Understand their concerns, their fears, and be sure to address them accordingly. So you need to plan for how to recall your employees and how to bring them back to work. You need to have a plan established, because otherwise all employees returning on the same day at the same time could certainly be overwhelming and most likely very unsafe. So you need to plan who's going to return to the work site, when, and how. The first thing is, if you furloughed or laid off your employees, you'll want to prepare your recall notices and identify the employees who you've identified to be recalled to work. Employees may be recalled according to the company's needs, essential functions, classifications, and ability to perform the job. A notice of recall should be sent to each employee, requiring their acknowledgement of their upcoming return to work. If your company had a policy about crediting seniority, bridging time between employment periods related to vacation, PTO, benefits, and so forth, you'll want to evaluate your benefits and your policies and, of course, comply accordingly. Also, be sure to notify the state unemployment agencies of employees recalled to work. This is a state requirement that will also help save on unemployment taxes for those who choose not to return to work. Once you've identified employees must return to the work site, those that are not able to return any other way, you'll need to make sure that you're looking at a phased-in approach for employees physically returning to the workplace. Which employees return to work should be based on necessity. They are essential to your business and cannot complete their job remotely. Managers need to decide which employees come back first, and considering again, where all possible, if remote work is the safest option. When we're looking at the who, when, and how of recalling your employees and bringing them back to work, we need to determine the when. The when, of course, depends on a number of factors, including your state, your local, and your government guidelines. So you'll need to rely on those guidelines as to when you'll be allowed to reopen. Once the workplace is considered safe, clean, and disinfected, it also may be time for you to reopen your workforce. And again, you want to look at phasing in employees who are returning to the workplace. Which employees return to your physical on-site premises should be based on necessity. They are essential to your business and they cannot complete their job remotely. Managers need to evaluate this, as well as leaders, and look at which employees are coming back first. Small groups should return in phases, starting with a pilot group. Your 10%, again, these are necessary, essential to your business, and they cannot work virtually. A lab researcher cannot work remotely. They need to be in the lab in order to do their work. So you start with your pilot group of those that are essential to your business that need to be on site. You evaluate and you recognize that there may be changes or plans to your strategy that you'll have to make along the way. With each stage and each phase, you'll learn more and you can adjust and adapt your plan accordingly. After you've started with your pilot group of 10%, then look at expanding to 25%, 50%, and so forth, eventually having all employees safely return to the workforce. The how that you'll want to consider is, how do you bring employees back? Consider a reduced schedule, perhaps a change in shifts, a compressed work week, staggered start or end times. You'll want to look at providing different opportunities for people to get their work done outside of the traditional Monday through Friday 9 to 5. And you'll need to be flexible and adaptable with how your employees can come to work, and also be open to staggered shifts that are going to reduce the amount of people that are in your office at the same time and also keep them safe. So what about employees that are unable or simply unwilling to return to work? We've determined who should come back to work. We've come up with our phased-in approach plan. But what if employees are simply unable or unwilling to return to work? What do we do then? It's important to recognize that employees may be fearful of returning to work. Some workers may refuse to come to work out of fear of contracting the coronavirus, and employers need to weigh employees' legal rights and understandable health concerns with the organization's business needs. It can be a very tough balancing act, and you need to consider the people side of your business and the emotional state that your people are in. Employers need to understand and address an employee's fear of returning to work and have a conversation with the employee about their concerns. Employees simply may not be able to return to work, though, due to family obligations. They may have a lack of childcare due to school and daycare closures, and they simply may not be able to return to work. Some employees may be under quarantine due to exposure to COVID-19 or a family member who's been exposed and they're self-quarantining in order to stay safe. And some employees simply have fallen in love with the idea of remote work. They've been able to make it work for the past 2 months. They've been productive and they've completed their goals while at home. They have a valid argument while they may want to continue to do so. So that's something that you'll want to address as well. So some employees have returned to work. However, they may experience events that prevent them from being able to continue to work due to COVID-19. Recent legislation that was passed is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, or the FFCRA. And this applies to businesses with fewer than 500 employees. It's important to note that small businesses in particular with less than 50 employees may qualify for an exemption and may not need to comply with this new regulation. This is a very high-level general overview of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And essentially what it does is provide paid sick leave. It provides 2 weeks of paid sick leave for an employee who is unable to work due to quarantine, experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, or caring for a family member with COVID-19 symptoms. It also provides paid expanded family and medical leave for an employee who is unable to work, specifically due to the reason that they are caring for a child whose school or childcare provider is closed due to COVID-19. Of course, this act has many other nuances and regulations, so it's important to familiarize yourself with the FFCRA, whether or not your organization needs to comply with this, and specifically the requirements for documentation, administration, and updating your policy accordingly. Businesses need to develop policies to comply, but also may consider alternatives such as remote work or schedule accommodations. So it's something important that you need to look at when it comes to your business, whether or not this is going to apply and how you will manage this accordingly moving forward. Another consideration in back to work, of course, is remote work, and remote work is here to stay. Telecommuting may have proven to work well during the pandemic for some employees and employers, and using it as not only a short-term tool to survive, but also as a potential permanent work-life balance or cost-saving measure really should be considered. Actions that employers may want to consider include continuing to allow remote work where possible in order to keep employees safe. If the workplace is not safe to return to, then remote work is really a viable option. Or if bringing your workforce back in stages is not feasible, then again, considering remote work. If employees are able to productively and efficiently meet goals, meet deadlines, and work from home remotely, then they should be allowed to continue to do so. And it's a great tool that organizations have in their pocket. You may want to also look at a blend of work as well, staggering weeks in the office and at home among team members. For example, having employees in the office 1 week and then the next week working remotely. So there's a rotating amount of employees who are in the work to essentially overall reduce the number of people that are in your workplace at one particular time. Of course, with remote work, technology is a huge component, and so you'll want to make sure that you're updating your technology to support virtual workers, looking at your policy, making sure that you have the technology in place and that your IT staff has been up to date, your policies are up to date, your technology is up to date, so you have all of the tools and equipment needed in order to support your virtual workforce. And you'll want to consider the long-term benefits and potential cost savings as well that offering permanent remote work may offer. Some examples, for example, again, Twitter said employees can work from home forever. Twitter was one of the first companies to go to a work from home model in the face of COVID-19, but they don't anticipate being one of the first to return to the offices. Having a communication plan and strategy is essential in your back to work plan. You need to establish a clear communication plan that is going to help employees and customers understand your company's plans to reopen. Topics include guides on what to do if you're sick, how to stay home if you're sick, how to physically distance and social distance yourself, how you need to use personal protective equipment or frequent and thorough hand washing in order to protect yourself and others in order to stay safe and healthy. Include your visitor and customer protocols as well, limiting the number of visitors that are on site, having particular visiting hours or times that they're allowed on site, or again, other protocols or procedures that you've put in place. You need to make sure that you are communicating that not only to your employees, but to your vendors, your visitors, your customers as well. You need to make sure that you're informing everyone of what new workplace safety measures have been implemented since reopening your business. What training have you provided? What policies have you put in place? What new workplace safety and disinfection protocols have now become a part of your business, and what have you implemented? You need to make sure that everyone is aware of the measures that you have taken in order to ensure that everyone is safe. And of course, have an exposure response communications plan ready to go. You never know if an employee or a customer is going to become affected and become sick. And you need to have that communication plan ready to go and those protocols ready to implement at a moment's notice. Looking at how those are going to affect your employees and your customers, now is the time to over communicate. Now is not the time to assume that your employees and your customers know that you're taking the proper precautions and protocols. Now is the time to make sure that you are in front of this, that you are proactive, that you are proactively communicating all of the steps and measures that you are taking in order to keep everyone safe, and again, over communicate to everyone involved. Of course, it's not business as usual, right? We're back at work, but it's not business as usual. Now is the time that we need to take a look at the changes and the rapid changes that have occurred over the last few months. And it's time to update or create policies to reflect what this new normal looks like for your business. Perhaps you didn't have policies in place before related to infectious disease control or safety protocols. Now is the time to create those. Or perhaps it's time to just revisit and relook at some of the policies that maybe no longer make sense in today's world in this new normal that we're living. So take a look at paid leave policies. Again, where applicable for certain employees, making sure that they're adjusted to reflect regulatory requirements and so forth, that you have that policy and that administration updated. Take a look at your attendance policy. Make sure that they're relaxed enough that you're encouraging sick employees to stay home. Look at your time off request procedures, clarifying when time off can be required by the employer if you have a sick employee that needs to be sent home. Look at your flexible scheduling options as well. Do you allow for compressed work weeks, flexible start and end times, things of that nature? Take a look at the language that you have in your handbook or those policies and make sure that it's lenient and flexible enough. Also, your meal and rest break policies may need to be adjusted. Again, you may want to stagger times and have different shifts throughout the day. So making sure that your policies, again, are flexible and lenient enough to encourage employees to socially distance themselves. Your travel policies may need to be updated, reflecting what is deemed as essential versus non-essential travel. And of course, the impact that domestic and global travel restrictions have in place right now. A huge area to consider is your telecommuting policy as well. Did you have a telecommuting policy before this happened? Did you implement a short-term telecommuting agreement? Is telecommuting something that is going to be here to stay and a permanent fixture of your organization? You need to look at your telecommuting policy and make sure that it's detailed enough to reflect the type of work that's able to be done remotely. And of course, information policies may need to be revised to reflect remote work hardware, software support, other types of equipment, access, protecting information. All of those things need to be reevaluated as we're living in the new normal. A business continuity plan is critical to your business, and employers have learned valuable lessons regarding their business continuity plans, or perhaps lack thereof, during the past few months. Now is the time to review and revise the plan and prepare for future emergencies. Implement a business continuity plan. Include infectious disease control if it didn't exist prior to the COVID-19 crisis. Now is the time to evaluate how does your business remain open and continues to operate in the event of another future pandemic. It's back to work, and the time to prepare is now. Every business is trying to figure out how to transition back, from reopening non-essential businesses to transitioning employees back to the office. As we've seen, there are many variables to consider, and the details and timing of each employer's plan will look different. There are still many unknowns, particularly related to government and state guidelines and the nature of your business, but the time to start preparing is now. The workplace you left will not be the same workplace you return to. It's time to define what the new normal looks like for your business. Most likely, the way that work happens will become a blend of office and remote work. The remote strategies we adapt today will still be important in the future of work, as remote work in some form is going to be here to stay for many organizations. Today's COVID-19 pandemic could permanently shift working patterns and the way that work gets done. Embracing new ways of working is one of the most impactful things companies can do today. We may never again in our lifetimes experience such an opportunity to reshape the way in which we work gets done, and how our business operates. Take advantage of this opportunity and make a positive change. In the spirit of togetherness, let's connect. At HRBoost, we can help. We're happy to talk through your questions and ensure we are well positioned to manage through this pandemic. HRBoost has developed a unique COVID-19 response package and webpage with materials, resources, and forms that businesses may need to address new legislation, expanded medical leaves, and policies pertaining to if and when one of your employees tests positive for coronavirus. Everything from policies to plans, everything else you may need, we have the resources and answers you're looking for. We believe every team and every business, big or small, should have the support to manage their people challenges. Let us give you the boost you need. Feel free to reach out. We're always on standby. Thank you for attending today's presentation. We hope you found the content helpful and informative. Stay safe and be well. Thank you.